What's up, Coopers? Ashley Nicole Moss here. Happy Eastern Conference Finals Day, all my Knicks fans. Look, there is so much to talk about in this show. We're going to dive into everything. We have a full house. We have a rotating panel. Brad Botkin's going to be joining me in studio, but we have Roy Hibbert, who I'm going to go at with because it is Pacers Knicks Day after all. And then later in the show, my guy Chris Walker is also going to be joining. There's so much to dive into. We're talking D-Wade. We're talking conference finals. We're playing a little game at the end of the show that you don't want to miss. But first and foremost, I want to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. If you've been watching this show, if you watch CBS Sports, you know I am a diehard Knicks fan. I've been that way since birth, and I take my role as a Knicks spokesperson very, very seriously. And because of that, I want to address the nation. I have my tie on. I feel very presidential, as you can see, and I am going to address the nation with something very specific. Because as the Knicks are rising through this postseason, the fan base is on national display in ways that we have never seen before. But I want you to know the difference between a Knicks fan and a clout chaser. Let's play this video real quick. Those ladies and gentlemen are clout chasers. No real Knicks fan would ever throw trash at a reporter, at a media member, at another person. No real Knicks fan would get in somebody's face like that from the media. Like I said, a prominent figure, a respected figure. Although we may not always agree with each other's takes and opinions, there is a level of respect that you have for people who have been doing it and have been doing it successfully for an extended period of time. And I want everyone to know the difference between those type of people and real Knicks fans. Just like when Trae Young was at the Garden and it was reported that he was spit on and things like that, those are not Knicks fans. Those are clout chasers. There's also this video that's going around about the garbage being thrown at a gentleman wearing a Pacers jersey. Now, that gentleman happens to be an FDNY firefighter. I think we have that video as well. Let's play that.
So she's trying to save the day.
Again, not everyone in Knicks gear is a Knicks fan. So I want to address the nation and let everybody know that yes, Knicks fans can be a little wild. They can be a little over the top. We talk a lot of smack. We stand on business. We're New Yorkers after all. And this team has been thrust upon us since birth. You don't choose to be a Knicks fan. A Knicks fan chooses you. And yes, we may get a little crazy and get a little passionate, a lot passionate when it comes to our New York Knicks, and you see us celebrating in the street, and rightfully so. There's been a lot of dark days as a New York Knicks fan. There's been a lot of losing as a New York Knicks fan, and we used to pray for times like this. I'm going to quote Meek Mill, but we also have a level of respect for people. And that's just people in general. Let's take basketball out of the equation. So I know these videos are going to be fun to pile on and say, this is why Knicks fans can't have anything, and this is why Knicks fans don't deserve to win. These people do not represent the New York Knicks. These people do not represent the orange and blue skies community. These people are losers. They are clout chasers. They're looking for their 15 minutes of fame. There is no reason to be derogatory, to be disrespectful, to throw trash at people. And again, they are not Knicks fans. We don't claim them. And I guarantee you, a real Knicks fan like myself, you ask any of them, will stand 10 toes down on exactly what I'm saying. So when you see these videos, do not lump us all together because we don't even claim them ourselves. And that is my PSA as I address the nation. When we come back, though, we are going to go toe to toe. Well, Roy and I are going to go toe to toe, and maybe Brad will be our official referee because we're talking all things Eastern Conference Finals right after this. Magic Johnson has just crept into a few higher spots on my all-time grades. He says, I have the New York Knicks beating the Indiana Pacers and the Minnesota Timberwolves beating the Oklahoma City Thunder to advance to the NBA Finals. I don't know so much about the Western Conference prediction, but I'm loving the Eastern Conference prediction. Ashley Nicole Moss here, and I'm joined now by Brad Botkin and Roy Hibbert. Now, look, we all know how historic this matchup is between the Pacers and the Knicks. I want to give you guys some history. These teams met up 6 times from 93 to 2000, with each team winning 3 of the series. So 3 of the wins came in the Eastern Conference Finals. 3 of the matchups came in the Eastern Conference Finals, with the Knicks winning 2 out of the 3. The Pacers ended up winning both semis when they have met up. So a lot of history. We all know Reggie Miller and the infamous choke gesture. The list goes on and on. You think of Patrick Ewing, you think of Jalen Rose, you think of those striped jerseys, which I'm not supposed to say this as a Knicks fan. I think those jerseys were actually kind of cold. I think they should bring them back. I like the retro stripes. I feel the same way about the Orlando Magic. We should bring them back. The Knicks, bring back the ones with the black stripes.
The Bulls pinstripes.
Yeah, those weren't a good look. Here's more history about the Pacers and Knicks rivalry. Now, it's interesting, though, because I feel like, let's be honest here, okay? We're going to be transparent and be honest. Is it cool to hate the Knicks? Why is it so difficult to give the Knicks credit when it comes to what we're seeing? When you look at what's kind of been circulating in the media circuit, it's what the Knicks need to look out for, why the Knicks need to be careful, why the Knicks could lose this series. But I don't see that same energy for the Pacers, Roy. Is it just cool to hate the orange and blue?
Well, I will say this, though. I think our fans are upstanding citizens. The Pacer fans, we're blue-collar people. We don't like to cause a ruckus in the streets. There's no trash being thrown or anything like that. I wouldn't use this word, but I've heard other people use the word deplorables for what we've been seeing on social media with the trash and everything like that. But the Knicks, to me, when I was playing, they were a hard-fought team. They were centered around like a lot of that mellow. And I think that energy that you guys have, that rough tumble, that's just the New York vibe. And for me, it goes to the territory. When I walk the streets of New York, I got to be ready for anything.
That's
you never
crazy.
know what can be coming my way.
That is crazy. I want people
I wouldn't use that word.
Listen, I started my show off with the PSA that those fans do not represent real Knicks fans. We don't claim them. We don't know them. They're not from here. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, look, my father-in-law's from New York, and you guys are just a special breed. I mean, you guys, it doesn't take long to know if somebody's from New York. So, yeah, I mean, they're pretty hot, and they're enjoying their moment right now. And I don't think the Knicks get any more hate than any team that's always in the public spotlight, that is just going to become naturally polarizing. The Lakers get it. You find these teams, the Yankees are certainly going to get it. All these teams that are constantly the Warriors get it, where they're constantly in the news whether they're good or bad. I mean, let's face it, the Knicks have not been a good team for a long time, but they're always front and center in what they're getting talked about. So outside of New York, that's going to spark all that. Why are we talking about the Knicks? They're not relevant. Now suddenly they are relevant, and Knicks fans are having their moment, and it just becomes a polarizing conversation. It's cool. I mean, it's what this conference finals is going to be, I think, incredible in large part because of that energy. So, I mean, I don't mind it. It's, people on Twitter, and you're always polite about it, but New York is New York.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a pretty great series.
Yeah, I mean, look, LeBron James, one of the greatest players we've ever seen, had some high praises for the Knicks and Jalen Brunson on his Mind of the Game podcast, and we're going to listen to this and react.
And the New York Knicks have built around Jalen Brunson on what his style is. Gritty guys, tough guys, long wing guys, and that's allowed him to be special in what he does. And like you said, being able to score the ball, get to the free throw line. He's a 3-level scorer, being able to get to the paint, use his footwork, things of that nature. We always talk about guys that went to Villanova. That's one thing they're going to have, and that's great footwork. Yeah. You're never going to be off balance.
Roy, your reaction to what King James had to say about the Knicks and specifically how they built this team around Jalen Brunson.
Look here, I think Jalen Brunson is the core, and to take it step back, like Bron said, I think that at Villanova nature, I played against Jay Wright when he started off with the 4 guards and having a guy who's 6'7", 6'8", like a Dante Cunningham at Villanova to be able to play that spread out offense, to play up and down and spread the floor. So I feel like that has transferred over to the NBA right now. And again, that most teams will have a traditional big man who will post up. Let's say Big Z for the Clippers. He calls the space. Now, if he's a great player, but if you transplanted him on the Knicks, when there's a lot of driving opportunities, he's going to get in the way because he's a post-up player. And he can offensive rebound. Now they spread it out. They got Mikal Bridges who can shoot, Josh Hart who can shoot. I still think I like DiVincenzo last year, but obviously getting Cat and obviously having him be able to spread the floor, it just adds more pieces and it allows Jalen Brunson to not have to do all the work all game and then lead him to the fourth quarter where he can actually, his game rises to the top right there.
Yeah, the spacing is crucial. And I think the thing that we should be talking about the most right now is how the Knicks specifically designed their team to beat the Celtics. And then they beat the Celtics. They copied the blueprint with the whole wing stop thing, a bunch of two-way wings with size and length and speed and athleticism that can score the ball, that can shoot the ball and space the floor, like Roy said, for Jalen Brunson. But also can defend multiple positions and can switch everything and can wreak that sort of havoc that we saw Mikal Bridges do late in games against Boston. And then they went and got the stretch big in Karl-Anthony Towns to replicate the Porzingis effect. Mm-hmm. They said, we're going to match up specifically with the Boston Celtics, and they beat the Boston Celtics. So I think from a structural standpoint, from a roster building standpoint, the Knicks have to be applauded for the way that they visualized their team competing and the way it has come to fruition. Now, I've had, my disagreements with you and with some other people that I think that they're a little bit out over their skis in terms of, look, they were minus 35. The Celtics were winning that series by 35 points through the first 5 games. They won the Pistons series by 8 points in 6 games. They had a game swing their way that shouldn't have on a referee mistake from the Pistons. I think 2 20-point comebacks against the Celtics are not things that you can depend on happening again. I don't think it was luck. I just think that the Knicks are a tad bit over their skis, but now they face a Pacers team that they can beat. I expect it to be a very good series. I just think from a macro standpoint, the Knicks deserve a lot of credit for the specific way that they designed their team, and it has come to fruition in these playoffs.
So in that same vein, I want to ask you, because we had this conversation the other day on HQ and also on Spotlight, I believe, and, the circumstances that you speak of with the Knicks, isn't it similar though it is similar for the Pacers. They faced a Milwaukee Bucks team that was injured, didn't have Dame, and it's an aging roster, a thin roster outside of Giannis. It relied heavily on Giannis to carry the load. You talk about what happened with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Although they had games where all of their starters were playing, they were not healthy. Donovan Mitchell's ankle, Darius Garland's toe. You had Mobley, you had Hunter. They missed games as well. It's similar to what happened with the Pacers last season when they advanced to the conference finals. They beat up on an injured Knicks team, and that's part of, Phil Jackson said it best, that winning a championship is part skill and part luck, and the luck is being healthy and coming across a healthy opponent. So I ask you then, with all your apprehensiveness about the Knicks and how they got to this point, if they were to beat the Pacers, that erased the doubt for you on this team?
I don't really have any doubt. And the reason I'm not citing the Tatum injury is because they were beating him when he went out.
Right.
They beat him. I'm not saying that this has nothing to do with them getting injury luck. That's why I'm not comparing them to the Pacers. I just think this is sort of like any sports team. Roy can speak to this, where you're sort of getting by the skin of your teeth, and a win's a win. But in terms of extrapolating that over another series and say we can continue to dig 20-point holes. We can continue to have the opposing team have historically bad shooting nights. I don't think those things are replicable. It's not to take away that they happen. I don't think it's a blueprint for continued success. The reason I don't think that the Pacers are being talked about in this way is, again, I think the talk about the Knicks, I think the Pacers still are being talked about sort of like that down-home underdog team where the Knicks are sort of, maybe it's just their own fans, but they're trying to elevate them into this like elite category. I don't think either of these teams is elite, but the way that we talk about the Knicks is starting to be elite. I think we need to pull back and say they're not an elite team, but they're also not facing an elite team, which is going to make for a great series. But I think the way that they've gotten to this point is not by rolling through. They barely got past the Pistons. And I think that's the real Knicks. Now, they're here, credit to them, but I think we're a little bit out over our skis talking about they're a flawed team. And in this particular series, I think they're going to have trouble with Indiana's pace. Right. I think they're going to have trouble. Do they crash the glass with Hart and Mitchell Robinson, or do they get back to stop Indiana's fast breaks? There's a lot of things that I think could give them problems.
Roy, I want to give you last word here on Brad saying that neither of these teams are elite. How do you respond?
Well, there's a meme that I actually got fined for when I was in the NBA. I said, you guys don't watch us play. And I'm talking about the Pacers. We play with pace, and obviously back then when I played, we had a good defensive team. But at the same time, this is stuff that a lot of Indiana fans hear all the time. You don't watch us play. You don't think we'll do anything. This team is going to rise to the top. I think they're elite. I think we're one of the best scoring teams. It's a team that, they could be down 20 at any point in time, and they keep their heads up. They don't get down on themselves. They don't point the finger. They play for each other. I do think they're elite.
Well, this series is going to be fun, and it's going to add to the history books that already exist. When we come back, though, what's not fun, Jimmy Butler being shaded by D. Wade. You're going to have to wait and see exactly what I'm talking about. Don't move. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everyone. And before the break, I teased that D. Wade is shading Jimmy Butler, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I meant by that. That, as we know, the Warriors' playoff run wasn't what fans or the basketball community expected after the team acquired Jimmy Butler via the Miami Heat through a 5-team trade on February 5th. Now, the biggest conversation that came out of that, outside of Steph Curry's hamstring injury, was everyone waiting the arrival of playoff Jimmy and the fact that he never really showed up. Well, his former teammate, Dwyane Wade, had some thoughts on that. Listen to this.
I didn't like the way he just approached the game. Like, I know Jimmy is a pass-first guy. I know he's about getting his teammates the ball and want to see them shine. But it's a point where you're getting 60. Mm-hmm. This ain't working. You got to go. Yep. He won't look at the basket. And I've seen this before. I've seen it in the Heat jersey. And so, in a sense, like when Pat come out, Pat say, we didn't want to give you an extension. It's not always because of injury. Sometimes it's, I need to see what you're going to do in every moment, not just in one moment. We saw Jimmy in the bubble. He was off. He was a dog. Yep. I saw Jimmy in another finals, too, against the Denver Nuggets. And he did the exact same thing he did the other night. He did not look at the basket.
He did not look at the basket. Roy, I'm going to come to you first, because when Jimmy was part of the Miami Heat, it's where the legend of playoff Jimmy really reached his peak. And we all know the infamous meme of Jimmy hung over at the baseline just out of pure exhaustion in the bubble from carrying the team. And it kind of solidified the legend of him as a playoff superstar. Yes, the regular season may be unpredictable with Jimmy Butler, but one thing, he's always going to show up in the playoffs when you need him the most. So from D. Wade, this is very shocking because, it didn't go the way that Jimmy and the Warriors fans wanted in Golden State, but it's not like we haven't seen him do it before. What'd you make of these remarks?
I think it's a little complex. First of all, I want to say, I think I was a good player, but I was never one of those guys that you just give the ball to and they can go get you like 30 or 40. I was more of like flow of the game, a point guard passing the ball, then I get to go to work. Now with Jimmy, he has the ball in his hands, and I will say this though. I know we talked a little bit a week or two ago, but he's making the right plays. So for me as a player, seeing him draw two to the ball and make a pass out to a guard and they miss, for me, I'm like, all right, I will live with that. But at the same time, I could understand why those guys who are like the next level, 2-3 levels above where I was, like saying, hey, you need to shoot that shot. For me, it would be a bad shot, but for those type of guys, it's a good shot. But so like I said, he played good offense, made the right plays. Now the second thing is he's getting older. He's 35 years old. They say in the NBA, you're on the wrong side of 30 at some point, and then it goes downhill. I'm not saying that he had great games throughout the season this year, but to me, it might be diminishing returns as he gets older. Would I like him to see him get 40 to get the team to win? Yes, but without Steph Curry, it's definitely going to be a lot harder. But I understand the frustration. I don't think what D. Wade said was out of the realm or something that needs to be, Jimmy needs to get upset about. He was just stating facts. But as you get older, things get a little bit more difficult. The knees and the body aches a little bit more, and you can't bounce back. Even though we have that image of Jimmy, like you said, giving it his all, exhausted. We didn't see that from him this matchup. Let's see what he does this summer. But I don't anticipate him, keeping those big numbers like he did before, and that's probably why the Miami Heat also didn't give him that extension.
Brad, I'll tee you up in a second because I have a different question for you, but a quick follow-up for you, Roy. So then, would you say that you disagree with the opening statement of D. Wade saying, I didn't like the way he approached the game? From your vantage point, he approached the series and approached that elimination game the way that he was supposed to? Or do you think that he fell short in his responsibility of trying to extend the series for a possible Steph Curry return?
I disagree with the statement at the top. I think he did play the right way. Now, in history, we'll look back and say he didn't do it. But as a player, I could be wrong. I'll talk to my contemporaries to see. But I think he did it the right way. I would rather somebody not force shots and play the right way, and hopefully their teammate, gets a bucket, and then that can get him rolled. The teammate gets open, they knock down some shots, and then now the defense is spread out. Now Jimmy can get going to the basket and do what he does, pump fake and get into the line, getting some and ones.
Brad, there was something in this statement that reminded me of something that you said, and it was the last sentence, where he said, I saw Jimmy in another finals versus the Nuggets. He did the same thing he did the other night. He didn't look at the basket. And it reminded me of you telling me that you spoke to, multiple people in the NBA and said that Jimmy Butler sometimes is too passive with the basketball. He's not aggressive enough. He's too much of, I want to get the team involved, too much of a teammate, and not enough of just kill first instinct. So do you agree with this statement because of those conversations that you had, or do you feel like this one sample size doesn't take away from the legend of playoff Jimmy?
I think it's all context. So the scout that I spoke with, the word that he used was careful. And he is very careful. Now, in the circumstance where Steph Curry's around and he can be depended upon to create all the chaos offensively, to create open looks for everyone else, and certainly to tangibly score the buckets, then Jimmy Butler is a great barometer. Mm-hmm. He calms everything down for a Warriors team that can get a little bit chaotic. All of his careful play, his jump stops, his pivots, his simple passes, not turning the ball over, valuing possessions, that stuff is incredibly valuable for the Warriors when there is somebody else to create offense. Where Jimmy Butler failed the Warriors is when Stephen Curry went out, the entire equation changed. There is nobody else on that offense that can consistently create leverage. It's not just about scoring. It's about creating leverage, to Roy's point, where you get downhill, you draw two, and you kick to shooters. He was not doing that enough. It was extremely passive. It was very slow, methodical moves into the paint, kick it back out to non-shooters. A guy like, you look at like Kobe or Paul Pierce or, all these guys that are go-to scorers, to Roy's point, where sometimes a bad shot for them is better than a good shot for somebody else. In this case, that is true. When Jimmy Butler's supposedly, quote, making the right play by not taking a contested shot himself and kicking it to the corner for Gary Payton to shoot a three. Gary Payton's not a shooter. Right. He's not going to have the space to shoot that he will have when Steph Curry's there, attracting all the defense. So when the circumstances changed, Jimmy Butler needed to change with them. The way he plays is perfect for the Warriors when Steph Curry's there. He was too careful. He was too scared of contested shots, of turning the ball over. You know, the greatest players, they have to court a little bit of failure. They have to try some small cracks. They have to take some contested shots. And I think, to the point that Dwyane Wade said, where he said Jimmy Butler's done this in a Heat uniform, that is true. This is a player that we've seen from Jimmy Wade, that we've seen him play in the past. It's just that he wasn't playing for the Knicks or the Warriors or the Lakers, where all eyes were on him. If all eyes were on him, which they are with the Warriors, he has a lot of these games like this. But with the Heat, it was only upside because nobody expected them to win. So we only remember the games that he carried them to victories we didn't expect them to get. He has been a pretty careful player in the past. It's just the spotlight was different now. When Steph went out, everybody said, well, Jimmy's got to get 40.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it. He did not attack it in the right way.
I think a little bit of D-Wade bringing up the Nuggets finals matchup was a little bit of a low blow, because I feel like it was just out of the norm. The team was even in that position in the first place, right? I mean, you took an 8th seed all the way to the NBA Finals, and a lot of that was on the back of Jimmy Butler. Let's be very honest. So I hear what he's saying about he didn't look at the basket, but they were overmatched and overperformed in that postseason to begin with. The fact that they were even in that position was a miracle and a testament to just how much of a dog Jimmy Butler is. So I feel like that example wasn't the best example. And to say he won't look at the basket, I haven't heard somebody say that about a player since they were talking about Ben Simmons. That's crazy to say about Jimmy Butler.
If you watch, it's not to the level of Ben Simmons, but there are multiple clips you could go find of him getting damn near all the way to the rim for what would be almost an uncontested shot and deciding to throw it back out 20 feet to a non-shooter. There are all kinds of clips you could find on that. Listen, you
don't trust Pajemski to hit the three?
No. Well, listen, there were a few where he's kicking out to Kevon Looney.
Right.
There's a middle ground that I think he failed to find.
Roy, before we let you go, I want to ask you this, because I feel like we have this conversation about players, and some people used to say this about the late, great Kobe Bryant, my favorite of all time, that he was too much of a ball hog. They say it about Luka. He holds onto the ball too much. And then you have Jimmy, who's on the other side, that he's too much of a teammate. Where's the line? Where should players be walking to appease the general masses when it comes to how the game should be played? Is it bad that Jimmy is too much of a teammate guy first?
I think there should be a middle. I play with a superstar, Paul George, and there'll be times where he's distributing the ball, and then there's times where at the end of the game, end of the half, end of the quarters, we know that this is his time to go ahead and take the ball, go one-on-one, and we live or die with whatever shot he takes and everything like that. Now, I want to say this though. Going back to, like, let's say the Boston Celtics game when what's his name, he got hurt. Tatum got hurt. He had 40 points that game, and he was obviously hitting shots. But to me, he was taking too many contested shots. He would hit one for like 4, and the crowd would go crazy. But then, like, he's just taking bad shots, and he takes them out of the game. Now, 40 points is great, but at the same time, to me, it erred on the side of too much mama mentality. And if those shots, and it kind of like stifles up the offensive players. They're not getting into a rhythm. So there's a fine line when you take shots out of the offense, it swings, come back to you, knock it down if it's a contested shot. But when you go one-on-one, right off the pick and roll or ISO, as soon as you come across the court, that to me could be a problem if you're not hitting at a high clip.
Roy Hibbert making his Triple Threat debut, and it won't be the last that we see him or I see him, because we are at war this Eastern Conference Finals. I'm sure I'll see you later in the day, and I can't wait to see you the next day with the outcome of Game 1. After this break, we'll be joined by Chris Walker, and we're going to talk about if the NBA playoff schedule needs to change. Don't move. Welcome back to Triple Threat, and Chris Walker joins us on the show. Now, look, before the Western Conference Finals, the Oklahoma City Thunder found themselves in a 7-game battle against the Denver Nuggets. Now, ultimately, the Thunder got the best of the 2023 NBA champions, winning 125-93. But it was the post-game comments from Aaron Gordon, who was dealing with a hamstring injury of his own, that really got people talking, and it was all about the NBA playoff schedule. He said, quote, "I would really appreciate it if there were a couple of days in between games in the playoffs instead of every other day. The product of the game would be a lot better. You'll see a higher level of basketball, probably less blowouts." Now, I know Brad did a whole mathematical equation that he shared with us a few days ago, I believe on HQ, but I'm going to start with you, Chris Walker. Does Aaron Gordon have a point when it comes to the NBA schedule? Should there be a little bit more rest in between these games, or he's just talking about somebody who lost a Game 7?
Listen, I'm from the old school, so I don't want to sound too old school about guys playing 82 games, right? Let's start there. I mean, it's a long season. And then, quite frankly, when you get into the NBA, that's an entirely different season. You talk about the LeBron Jameses and why he has all the records that he has. He has the records because he's played like another season every single year. So there's a lot of mileage there, and which is why he has a lot of statistics, a lot of stats that'll probably never be broken. Juxtapose that what's going on now with guys being possibly injured, wear and tear. Again, the old guys will say, those guys are soft. But they played less series back then. Best of 5 series. There were less teams. These guys, the wear and tear that these guys have today are just unbelievable. And let's face it, we do it because of TV. It's the TV schedule. It's to keep us captivated. You don't want to lose sight of, who's playing when, but he's right. The blowouts will probably happen less frequently. Now, again, the travel is what you also got to factor in. And it's part of the game. But I don't want people to give Aaron Gordon or any of these high-paid players, because we sometimes equate the money that they make with their bodies should be able to handle it because they make $60 million, a year. But these guys are tired. The TV schedule, as I said before, they're trying to keep up with it, keep it in prime time, and it's just really, really tough for these guys to come back game after game. 7-game series. Think about it. If you're an NBA team and you play a 7-game series to win the championship, that's almost half of another season. And you're playing it in a condensed form to June. And so I think it's really, really difficult. A lot of guys, again, that's why you want to shorten the season. But because of TV, because of the money that's generated and because of the money they make, I think it's going to be difficult, but it's certainly something to take a look at.
I wish we had a whiteboard so Brad could go Goodwill hunting and show us his mathematical equation that he verbally broke down for us a few days ago. But Brad, here is the floor, because I know you worked the numbers out in your head. So go all Rain Man on us. Break it down. Does Aaron Gordon have a point?
Yeah, he's got a point. But to Chris's point, it's not going to change because it's money. They need to, the only way you could space out the playoffs more is to and still end the season at the same time, because these guys value their summers. They don't want to play into August. And
you don't want to run into an issue with an Olympic year, things like that.
Yeah, so you got to end the season at the same time. So the only way to do that and spread out the playoff games is to shorten the regular season. It's not going to happen. There's too much money at stake. And even the players themselves, Aaron Gordon is saying, I sure would appreciate a couple days between playoff games, but the way to accomplish that would be to shorten the regular season. And if they shorten the regular season, Aaron Gordon is not going to make as much money. So I've talked to NBA players about this, and we in the media love to talk about shortening the season, but go ask the players if they want the season shortened. They'll say no because they still want their check.
Well, the athletic poll showed that they were not in favor of it.
Because they know their check will get smaller. You're paid on a number of games. So it's purely a money thing. But if we take out the context of could this actually happen, Aaron Gordon is right. When you're playing every other day, you should not have, to whatever degree that you can control it, you should not have fatigue and injuries impacting playoff series. That's when your best players, your best teams are supposed to be at their best, and your product is front and center with the best that it has to offer. So if you look at the Timberwolves and the Warriors series, if they didn't play every other day, if there was 2 days in between each game, Stephen Curry probably makes it back for Game 4. So from a league standpoint, now you've got one of your most marketable players playing again. But they play every other day. There's no time for his injury to recover, and he's completely out of the series. That's not good for the product. Aaron Gordon's right, but it will never change.
What then is the solution? Because to your point, Brad, we've seen a lot of injuries this postseason that have possibly affected the outcomes of certain series. You have Steph Curry going down. Damian Lillard obviously was before the playoffs, but you have Jason Tatum. You have Donovan Mitchell dealing with an injury. If the Lakers had advanced, it came out that LeBron had a knee injury that probably would have affected him in the second round. So the list goes on. And if it is about money, if it is about marketability, there's nobody more marketable than, say, a LeBron James or a Jason Tatum. But if those guys aren't able to play because of injury, then it kind of contradicts the point of trying to make money. So, Chris, if you are the commissioner, how do you rectify a situation without shortening the season?
Again, you're in a tough situation, you know. You can't rob Peter to pay Paul here. 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. The players want to be paid. If the players want to be paid, we have an issue with shortening the season, right? Because everyone does not make the playoffs. So now when you get to the playoffs, you can say, well, let's go back to 2-3-2, probably where there's less travel. But now then you have teams complaining because, again, like the Celtics, they lost both games to start the series. Now they got to play 3 games and never having a chance to even really have a chance to get back into the series. So, again, no matter how you slice this thing, there are going to be people complaining on one side, and on the other side, people are going to be saying, hey, champion something that they believe that bodes well for their franchises moving forward. I'll say this, the one thing that you can do possibly, all right, to mitigate this situation is try to end the season sooner. And Brad mentioned a great point about how those players want their summers. The only guys that are getting their summers are the guys that are playing. The other guys are out. Right? So most of the teams are done.
Yeah,
let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So maybe, again, I know this sounds crazy, maybe, start the season a little bit sooner so you can end it a little bit sooner. Because like I said, half the teams are out, and then there can be some favorable scheduling for the teams that made the playoffs. To me, that's the only way to change it, because when baseball kicks into high gear, think about it, and Brad, you may disagree. You got football ending. Everyone knows America's a football country. Baseball cranks up, but people really don't think about baseball until basketball's over. So you're fighting for all this TV space and all this money. All these things factor in. The players, this is a C-suite thing that they don't think about until it starts affecting their bottom line, which is their check. And when you talk to Aaron Gordon after Game 7, there is a bit of, woe is me that we the game. So let's keep that in mind. And talk
Brad,
to him
you
about 5 days from now, he'll be like, hey, man, let's keep it the way it is.
Brad, you actually brought up 2-3-2 and going back to that. Hearing Chris's pushback on that, do you still like that idea?
No, this speaks to, like, if you got rid of conferences, because the travel, if you ended up with like Portland and Miami, they would say we can't do that, it's too much travel. But if you went to 2-3-2, it's less mileage than Portland, Memphis, which is 2 Western Conference teams. So you could do 2-3-2 for that reason. There's such an elephant in the room with less games. You could, even if you didn't want to shorten the regular season, you wanted to make all your money between October and April, you could shorten the first round to 5 games again. You could shorten the first 2 rounds to 5 games and only go 7 from the conference finals and the finals, and give more time in between. There are ways, whether you're cutting it off the regular season or off the playoff. I actually think 5-game series would be a lot more interesting. Now, we have a lot of parity now, so a lot of these series are really competitive anyway. But back in the day, which wasn't that long ago, when an 8 seed had almost no chance of beating a 1 seed, you're talking about like a once in a lifetime thing. 5-game series do make that a more viable thing to happen. So I think 5-game series early on in the playoffs, but go talk to the owners about the gate of a playoff game and getting potentially 2 less playoff games. It always comes back to fewer games, whether in the regular season or the first couple rounds of the playoffs, and that's going to come back to money, and that money eventually feeds to the players. So they can say all they want about how they want more time, but until they're willing to give up some cash, they're not going to get it.
Brad said, put your money where your mouth is, Aaron Gordon, and all NBA players. Look, when we come back from the break, we're doing In Your Bag a little bit differently. I have a fun game that I'm going to play with these guys. You don't want to miss it.
All right.
So one thing I just love about NBA Twitter is all of the insane and sometimes hysterical overreactions and hypotheticals, including this one that came across my timeline. So we're going to play a little game based on a game that I can't take credit for, but absolutely went viral, and I can't wait to see the reactions to all of you. So this graphic here has a player for each month of the year. Now, the player on your birth month has to hit a wide open three-pointer for you to live. Are you good, Brad? We will start with you. Are you living or dying?
I'm good.
What's the birth month?
September. Dame time is probably the number one player I'd want on here. But here's my situation. I'm good. My daughter's good in June, Steph Curry. But my wife is dead in May with Shaq. So I'm a single father. If this game's playing out in real life, I'm going to be a single father.
Okay, Chris Walker, are you living or dying?
Listen, I'm not only good from my fiance to my baby daughter. I am all good. I got December and I got July. So you tell me right now, this guy is covered.
Chris's family is intact.
Your whole family is intact. Okay.
Don't tell me you're January.
Well, guys, it's been nice knowing you because I am January.
Ben Simmons. Good
I am January. Ben Simmons would be the person I had to rely on for an open three-pointer to save my life.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
So it's been real. I've enjoyed doing this show.
Hey, maybe in the summertime, not in a real game, but you know those summertime clips he puts out?
Yeah, for sure. If it's one of those, Chris, you know, as a 76ers fan, you know what we're talking about. If it's one of those hype videos, I might live.
If it's in a real game,
if it's in a real game, just put me out of my misery beforehand, because there's no absolute way I am making it out alive. I love these games. I think it's hilarious. I think that lineup, though, outside of January, was a pretty. Can we put that graphic on the screen one more time? Why did January get the short end of the stick?
Well, May too.
Well, May too. But other than
my wife's done in May.
all the other months were solid.
No, November, you don't want Rudy Gobert chucking up a three.
Oh, yeah,
and you're not feeling great about March. Westbrook, you're not feeling great about
If it's
Westbrook.
a corner three.
I mean, if we want to keep it real, February is a little questionable too. I'm gonna be honest with you. Come on now.
Now
Jordan slander.
Now we're talking.
Ooh, the Jordan
Me and
slander.
Chris came out with me and Chris got the four best: Curry, Dame, Durant, and Larry.
Are you feeling confident about August?
No.
No.
I think there's a lot of dead people.
What about April?
Yeah, he can make it, but I think half the population
Let me
going out.
Sharon, our producer. When's your birth month, Sharon? Oh, Sharon, our producer, is April.
I think you're dead, dude.
LeBron, that's LeBron. That's Superman. He can do anything.
I think you're dead. Is it old? Because old LeBron can shoot threes. If it's young LeBron, when he was like 28%, Sharon's dead.
Well, the same thing could be said about October, because Klay Thompson, which version? Splash Bro Klay Thompson or Dallas Mavericks Klay Thompson?
Klay Thompson, 80 years old. I'm good. I'm living.
You sure?
Yes.
I don't know.
Klay's going to be shooting until he's dead.
I went to a Dallas Mavericks game, and he wasn't hitting those three-pointers like he used to in Golden State. I'm just saying. So which version of Klay Thompson is it?
Any version. Klay Thomps's cool.
Any version. I'll take him.
Once again.
Ash, one thing we know, Ash, you're going to be gone. Brad, I'll fly to Fort Lauderdale. We'll do the show. Ash is done. So it's a wrap.
Guys, this is my last show because I had to rely on Ben Simmons to save me. Look, Eastern Conference Finals, Game 1. It goes down tonight, 8 p.m., Madison Square Garden. Don't want to miss it, because we'll definitely be talking about that game, the game after that, right here on Triple Threat. If you missed any moment of today's show and you want to find out if you're living or dying, make sure you scan this QR code to watch the full episode on the CBS Sports Network YouTube page. For myself, Brad, and Chris, it's been real. Go Knicks.